Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions of some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a retired Operations Battalion Chief with more than 30 years in the fire service, serving in roles ranging from firefighter and paramedic to training chief, safety officer, and fitness coordinator. Over the course of his career, he became heavily involved in firefighter health, wellness, and operational performance, helping shape fitness and recovery programs designed specifically for the demands of the job. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Exercise Science with a minor in nutrition from Washington State University, and he is the founder of Firefighter Peak Performance, a training and consulting company focused on firefighter fitness, mobility, resilience, and career longevity. He's also well known for his work with CRACKYL magazine, where he serves as the executive fitness advisor, where he has contributed heavily to conversations surrounding firefighter culture, performance, leadership, and wellness. And maybe most of all, well, at least to me, he's the person at the helm for the next 16 weeks of my life as I navigate going from fat to fit using the Firefighter Peak Performance model. My pleasure to welcome Ryan Provencher. Good afternoon. How are you? Welcome you for joining me.
I'm doing great. Hey, Jake, thanks for having me. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great. Yeah, it's a good day. I was saying before the podcast started, a little hungry. I'm doing a little preparatory work as we work into our program that we'll get into talking about here. But a little fasting this morning. It's kind of good. I feel strong. I feel happy. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to lunch here after this recording.
Yeah, it's about lunchtime for sure.
Yeah. So once again, welcome to the podcast. I'm super excited, and we will get into some of the stuff that we're going to be working on kind of over the course of the summer. But before we get into your business, the work that we're going to be doing together, I do want to go all the way back to the very beginning and start this thing out how I start most of the podcast is why the fire service?
Yeah. So that does go way back. My dad worked in law enforcement. And so even from being a small kid, I always looked up to my dad and I always appreciated the work that he did in law enforcement. And all his buddies were always around. We go on camping trips with all his coworkers. And it was just this really tightly knit group of folks. And so I was aware of public service my whole entire life. And then my dad, he took fitness very seriously. And so again, just in trying to emulate him, I started working out with him in our garage when I was 13 years old, lifting the old school like cement weights. And so kind of organically as a young kid in the back of my mind, I'm already interested in public service and I'm already kind of interested in this whole fitness thing. And so when I went to college, I was going to be an athletic trainer. I was big into sports and loved everything about competitive sports, and unfortunately was not gifted to take sports any further than high school football. So, but once I got into it, it did not fill the void at all. Like the whole thing of serving athletes was completely different than being one. And one of my high school wrestling coaches was like, "Hey man, you should think about the fire service." And when he said that, Backdraft had just come out, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like that's something other people do. I could never be a firefighter." And so I didn't really give it much thought after that. And then again in college, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do. Now I get into exercise science, and a family friend said, "Hey man, why don't you come volunteer for the fire department?" And so I was like, well, I'll go check that out. And oh man, I immediately loved it. Everything I loved about sports, from training to perform on the field and being part of a team and all these things, loved it. And then it just so happened that I was already studying exercise science. So all these things that I was studying, whether it was biomechanics and energy system development and these things that we're talking about in the context of athletes, applied directly to firefighters. And so, dude, this light came on. I'm a volunteer firefighter, and I immediately just decided I was going to be a firefighter, started testing the whole 9 yards.
So from that point, how long did it take for you to make it a career?
So I was in college until 95. I started testing, I think, even before I graduated. And it took me another couple of years. I tested ultimately for 3 years before I ever got hired. Luckily, getting hired with the Bellingham Fire Department in 1996.
So for the listeners, Bellingham, that's Bellingham, Washington, which is what, an hour and a half north of Seattle?
Yeah.
Yep. So ironically, as we started to talk, my best friend in the whole world lives just a little bit north of Bellingham. I've been to Bellingham. There's a mountain there, Mount Baker. I've climbed Mount Baker. Yeah, it's a beautiful city. I love the Pacific Northwest. It's the best. But yeah, a small world thing. But so at that point, how are you living in that part of the world? You're living up whereabouts, Bellingham-ish?
Yeah, so I was basically born and raised in Kirkland, Washington, which is, not that far south, kind of in between Seattle and Bellingham. And man, I was testing all over Western Washington. I was a resident firefighter in Snohomish County and testing with them as well. And I wrote about this recently, but I was in academy with my second department, this resident department. They were hiring some folks and they put a bunch of us on the list into the academy and at North Bend. And I'm in my 6th week of academy. I'd been testing all over Western Washington, and one of the instructors comes in. He's like, "Provencher, you got a phone call." And so I'm like, holy, that does not sound good. Like, so, I take the call, and it was Fire Chief Mike Lee with the city of Bellingham. And he's like, "Hey, Ryan, this is Chief Lee with the Bellingham Fire Department. How'd you like to come work for us?" And I said, "Chief, that would be a dream come true. I'm in academy. I have 2 weeks left. What do you want me to do?" He's like, "Hey, man, finish strong. There'll be a job waiting for you when you get out."
Amazing. Right.
And that was maybe one of the greatest days of my entire life to this day.
What did your parents or father, maybe more specifically, think of you taking the fire service route, working in law enforcement?
Early on, he was proud of me for going the fire route and didn't get too much into the, well, why didn't you want to be a cop? Later on, he actually retired from alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. He was a federal law enforcement agent with them. And, a lot of stuff happened and with law enforcement. And even today we see, some of the grief our brothers and sisters over there get at times. And he's like, "Man, you're so lucky you went fire." Like he was really, really supportive of it the whole time, but certainly towards the end of his career and even after he retired, he was super pumped that I was a firefighter.
Yeah. And especially, as you look at the landscape in the mid 90s versus the landscape now, it's definitely become harder and harder to be a police officer, I would say.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
What do you remember about the hiring landscape in the career field in the mid 90s as you were making your way into the fire service?
Oh man. Well, I remember oceans of people. Like you would show up for, there's 3 spots available, 3,000 people are there. You're spending the night on the concrete just to get an application. That was one thing. And then all these different departments, this was before the CPAT. So there was all a wide range of physical ability testing, often pretty rigorous around the physical part of it. So super competitive. And then the written tests were, I can't remember who was putting them out, but it wasn't like the video and written combination you're seeing today. It was a very kind of older school, like, hey, here's your math section, here's your mechanical advantage section. And so as a candidate, you learned real quick what your strengths and weaknesses were, and you would, study, and we would always partner up. I had this whole crew of friends that were all testing together. We're all working together as residents or had worked together, and we're teaming up and helping each other. So it was kind of a fun period of time where a whole big group of us were all testing with the same goals in mind. And then it felt a lot different then than maybe it is now in terms of just the sheer numbers and the statistics were not in your favor in terms of getting the job.
Yeah, definitely. How do you think that the limited candidate pool versus the maybe excess candidate pool of the 90s has affected our expectations of new firefighters?
Yeah, and I think there's such a wide range there. And so I had the good fortune of being, in leadership positions at the end of my career. And I was a training division chief and interviewed hundreds of candidates. We hired a ton of people. And I feel so fortunate in Bellingham. We just hired great people. And I was worried about that. I was worried that, hey, because not only do we have a shrinking candidate pool, now we're having to really cast a wider net just to get enough people in the door. So now we're no longer requiring firefighter 1, firefighter 2. We're no longer requiring EMT. So those used to kind of be a little bit of testing grounds for candidates where you knew they'd already passed some sort of test or showed some sort of proficiency around the job to even get in the door. And that went away at some point for all the reasons you're sharing about kind of just making sure you get enough people. But I think our organization did a really good job of committing to a hiring process that helped you know who you were hiring. And man, we hired great people. So I guess that's my long-winded way of saying, yes, the landscape looked completely different. But even now, when I look at a department that I just retired from that had out of 200 firefighters, less than 50%, I would say 50% or around 50% have 5 years or less on the job. That's how junior the department is. And because the department changed so fast, we had a very difficult time keeping up with training them, what I would say properly, or to the level I would hope that we would train and support. But because of the quality of the people, man, they adapt so quickly, and here we are with this really diverse department, and they're all doing great work. So that's my impression of it in my personal experience.
So what was the thing about your hiring process there that was working well?
So we expanded the scope of how we did it. So we implemented what we called speed interviews. So we would literally commit to seeing 400 plus candidates. We would see everyone that applied for 7 minutes. And the panel would ask them 3 questions, almost like speed dating. Mm-hmm. And when they're going through the speed dating process, it's in 7 minutes, it's a yes, a maybe, or a no. And that's, just based on that, their application for one, and then how they answer these 3 simple questions. And then that weeds out a lot of those people, like, why do you want to be a firefighter? Oh, I feel like chicks dig it. That's, maybe you're not a good fit, for that. So, so that was the first part. We expanded the scope of who we were seeing and the volume of candidates. Then we had a panel interview where members of our department at different ranks and different experience would do a deeper interview. We called it the panel interview, and ask a wide range of questions. And then those candidates, the top 25% or whatever, would go to the chief's interviews. And then the chief's panel could really ask anything they wanted to just really make sure that we were getting the best candidates. And I just remember we were sitting in the room. We've got pictures of the candidates. We've got the top, let's just say 30. And we've done that same thing, here's our top 5, here's our 10 that we're not sure. And we're just kind of moving people around based on our impressions of them in their interview. And it was really an arduous process. And everyone at every step of the way was really deeply committed to making sure that we were getting the right people.
So a good contingent of the listenership or viewership of this is people that are maybe in the volunteer or part-time side that are trying to get that final full-time job.
Yeah.
In your experience doing those hiring panels and overseeing some of this stuff, what are some of the traits that you were like, automatically I'm interested, and automatically this is not a good fit?
Yeah. So I think you just look at it from different ways. So to me, and in our department, we always kind of had two big categories. One was the performance category. The other was the behavior category. So performance was everything you might expect, physical fitness, ability to do the job, in the technical sense, ability to learn, the academic side of it. So that's all the performance metrics. And then the behavior side, that's all the softer stuff. Does this person have self-awareness? Does this person have situational awareness? Are they going to be a good teammate? Are they coachable? Even if they're the best firefighter in the world, are they pleasant to be around at the kitchen table and at the station? So, for the candidates out there, just really commit to reflecting on yourself. I really encourage folks to ask around, ask people to give you honest feedback around those 2 areas. The performance metrics are a little bit more objective. It's, I'm either strong or I'm not. I'm either fit or I'm not. I can throw a ladder or I can't. Those things are, they're measurable. They're more objective, but it's the softer stuff, the personality stuff, especially in this day and age where we're seeing more folks with less experience, or we're seeing folks that really don't maybe have as deep of understanding of what the fire service is all about. really, really reflect and ask questions and be open to gaining that feedback so you can, for one, just make sure it is the right job for you, and two, make any adjustments you need to make to be a good teammate.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back in your career. What do you remember about, like, you get the call from the chief, you're super excited, you got 2 more weeks left in that academy.
Yeah.
You're finally going to make the move up to, your career now. What do you remember about those early days of being new and adjusting and conforming and learning and all those things?
Yeah. So, first of all, I just floated through those next 2 weeks of academy. I was just so excited. And even the instructors, they're so rigid early in academy, and they kind of soften and you can see their personalities at the end. So everyone was supportive in that sense. And then, it was just a week or two, and I'm starting my first day with the Bellingham Fire Department. So it was interesting. Back then, we didn't have a formal academy. And so we had the training division chief. He kind of walked us through, and I felt very fortunate that I had just been through an academy. So I was able to kind of pick up on some things, as we're going through throwing a pack and hose deployment and some of this basic training stuff. So that was helpful. And then the department back then, a lot of the firefighters were more senior, and they came up and through the organization in the 60s and 70s. So I can, just share that the personalities were the things that I heard and things were said to me then you would never hear today. Mm-hmm. I'll say that much. And as I was even joking with, I have a friend, Brody Lowy, we got hired together, and he's going to retire shortly as well. And we were just sitting around telling stories about some of these things in the early days. And oh man, we were just laughing so hard around the characters and some of the personalities. And then the other thing that was meaningful or memorable, so I get out of an academy, it was 2 weeks, kind of this orientation, and the biggest winter storm in department history hits Bellingham, Washington in 1996. And my first shift, I think, was like 76 hours long. And so I finished my day shift on Friday. They basically said, hey man, a lot of guys and gals can't go home, and a lot of folks can't get to work. So we just need to keep you here. And I'm like, okay. And man, I slept on a mat in the gym. Like, we're eating canned food and just running all over town, doing all sorts of different calls. I had the time of my life. Like, I was like, I cannot believe that they are paying me to do this right now. This is amazing.
Yeah. There's moments like that at work all the time. It's like, man, this is a pretty good job, man.
Yeah.
Even when you're not working, it's like, so you made mention of the idea that, like, physical fitness standards were different then.
Yeah.
I think we're adopting, and this will definitely tie into our conversation later, which is the fire service is starting to look at firefighters more and more as athletes and tactical athletes is one of the phrases often thrown around. I don't think that kind of mantra and thought process existed very much back then. What was the viewer? What was the thought in terms of, like, what was the expectation in terms of physical fitness and performance at that point?
Yeah, no. And again, I feel so lucky. I came into a department that the day I got hired, we already had fitness testing twice a year. We had an entry-level physical that was very, very, very demanding. And it's because there were a few people, Danny Anderson, Mike Larson, Connie Tucson, they were very fitness minded, and they committed to kind of bringing it into the organization in the late 80s, early 90s. And so when I came in, that standard was there, and I had the good fortune, because of my educational background, they brought me in like right away, into the peer fitness trainer team. And so we're offering all these amazing things. The department is so committed to it that there's a monetary incentive. So if you participate twice a year, you get $200, and that's like, it's basically $100 an hour to do these simple fitness tests. And back then, I would guess maybe 30 to 40% participation, maybe 30 to 40% you would describe as physically fit. A handful of folks were still smoking. So even though the organization had this really amazing framework and was starting to move that direction, it really wasn't adopted as part of the culture. And it's funny though, you fast forward 3 decades, and dude, I would say 90% or more participate in all of that. 90% or more would be considered fit. And you mentioned athlete, and I'd love to dig into that because I have a lot of thoughts about that or things we could discuss. But in Bellingham, a lot of those firefighters are athletes, like literally, like, this guy over here is a runner and this gal over here does competitive swimming, and they literally are athletes away from the job. It just so happens that they're also firefighters. And again, that comes back to making a decision as an organization that when we interview people, that's important to us. And so we're going to ask them, why is physical fitness important for firefighters? Talk us through your weekly workout schedule. And if a person couldn't articulate those things, there's a good chance they wouldn't get hired, because other candidates, even with everything being equal, also understood that fitness was important.
And this is maybe speaking from my own lens and the times I've been up to the Pacific Northwest, but it does seem like there is a culture of activity in the Northwest of like, because the mountains are beautiful and the trails are amazing. It's like, we're going to go out in nature and be active and go for runs and go for hikes and all the things. Do you think that is that a flawed lens from that's why I've been up there a lot of the time? Or is it like, that is the culture of the area?
No, it is absolutely the culture, whether you're a firefighter or not. You live in Bellingham and you definitely take advantage of, Mount Baker, as you said, there's snowboarding, there's Lake Sandwich, Lake Whatcom for all sorts of different water sports. There's beautiful golf courses. Galbraith Mountain is known for mountain biking. And you could do all of that in one day. Like, depending on the time of year, like you could literally do all of those things all in the same day if you were so inclined. So it is amazing recreation here.
And so when you think about that idea of like screening your candidates for their interest, and maybe even just as simply as their interest in physical activity, right?
Yeah.
Is this a part of your life?
Yeah.
Like, can that trait be trained, or is it something that they have to come to the job with?
It's like anything else. Can people change? Can people kind of adopt that after not having it? Yes, I think that 100%. I think that's possible. But if you've got 20 candidates and 10 of the 20 have it already and the other 10 just don't, you're probably more inclined to go with the folks that already have it, because then you just don't have to sell it, first of all, and you're not taking any chances hoping that someone decides that they're going to make it important.
Mm-hmm. So one more question on hiring, because I'm fascinated with hiring as of lately, which is, are there any traits that you believe can't be trained after the hiring process?
In my experience, I feel that people either have self-awareness or they don't, and they either have situational awareness or they don't. It's very difficult, in my experience, to observe that in someone and then coach them on it and then see a big change in a relatively short amount of time.
So if that's true, which I think you're dead on, how do we screen for that?
So in our recruiting case, it's tougher in the interviews because you don't know, the person, you don't know how to compare what they're saying to what the reality of it is. But again, we look at our recruit academies also as kind of a screening tool. And when you look at our evaluations, and as I said, we've got all of our performance metrics in our weekly recruit evaluations, and we have all of our behavior metrics in our weekly recruit evaluations. And right there in writing is situational awareness and self-awareness, week after week after week after week. And as well as I do, whether you observe a candidate, make a decision around something and you have a conversation around it, and how they explain it just doesn't really reveal situational awareness. And then self-awareness, hey, what led you to say this, or what led you to do this? Or, hey, we've been talking for a few weeks now about this specific thing. What is it about our conversation that you're struggling with understanding in terms of the expectation? And so we would document that week after week after week, and we had a whole cadre of instructors, and we would collect from them instructor observation reports for each candidate. So they would have all of these variables or metrics in their hands, and they would just every day kind of observe and report. And then for me as the training division chief or my drill master, we would kind of collate all of that into now this comprehensive report that is a really detailed snapshot of how that recruit is doing in all of those areas.
Mm-hmm. And so in your experience, would you say that if you have a candidate or a cadet or whatever vernacular you use, that's a problem in the academy, is it a fair assessment to say that they will continue to be, and it's likely not going to change in the course of their career?
Yes, it is a high likelihood. And we got to the point, and again, we had a very supportive administration and supportive human resources, because you learn that lesson a couple times. And so we had probably about a 20 to 22% attrition rate in academy. And we would hire 12 and we would graduate 8, 9, 10 typically. And that was for those reasons. Like there was something, and it wasn't, those decisions weren't taken lightly. It was nothing that would, it would be week after week after week after week of observing an issue and really openly communicating that with the recruit and conveying the expectation. And at the end of the day, if those expectations weren't met before graduation, that recruit did not graduate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that the fire service in general would benefit a lot from that mindset. I think that as I talk to people across the country, and nobody's ever surprised that a person that struggles in the academy struggles in their career.
Yeah.
It really is, it's a great compressed medium to see what a career is going to look like.
Yeah.
And all too often, unfortunately, administrations, HR departments, city administration, whatever it might be, fail to act on it, even though it ends up being, from a 16-week problem, it becomes a 30-year problem. And, one bad apple in the mix can make a lot of problems for a department.
Oh man. And then coming all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, if you imagine, if we were to have a conversation like, hey, what does a highly functional, high-performing fire department look like? And ultimately it looks like everything we're saying with, hey, they perform really well on calls, they're really nice to people, and they're great teammates. And if you have 100% of your department that's operating at that level versus 80 or 70 or 60, that's a very, very, very good fire department. And if you commit as an organization from the very beginning to how casting a wide net to get as many people in the door as you can, committing to a very systematic filtering process so that at the end of that, you've seen a ton of people to give you the best chance to find the best people. And in the end, you're hiring the people that check all those boxes. And then in academy, you've got one more chance, and hopefully you don't need it, but you've got one more chance in academy to just make sure that person's the right fit. And if they're not, it doesn't serve you to graduate them, because then that percentage we just talked about in terms of high performance, high functioning, that's going down now. When we always looked at ourselves in the training division as the gatekeepers, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, but we took it serious. Like we had a standard where we wanted our department to be high performing, highly functional, as did everyone on the floor. And everyone on the floor looked at us and said, you have that responsibility to hold that for us, which we took seriously.
So as we keep moving through your career, now you're a firefighter. What do you remember about those days? So it would be 96, you were a firefighter, right?
Yep.
So what year abouts do you promote?
So I went through probation and made it through probation. I was a firefighter. And we, again, remember this is early 90s. So we weren't training a ton. Our training division wasn't as structured as it eventually later was. And the highest performers in the department at that time were the paramedics. And so I'll never forget, I was on a call. I'd been on the job a couple years, and this paramedic's the only paramedic on the call. It was a critical patient, and he's like, doing he's running circles around this patient, doing everything. And I'm just like, I felt so helpless. There's nothing I can do to help. And I hated that feeling. So boom, right after that, I went into medic school and was a firefighter paramedic for 6 years. And then kind of started looking at the company officer position. I then promoted to captain. I did that for about 7 years. And then the training division, training captain position opened, which, that looks like fun. So I did that. And then a couple years later, the the division chief position in training came open. So,
Wow.
so I've been lucky, man. I just, someone asked me when I retired, like, hey, what would you have done differently? And I was like, I don't know. I feel so lucky. Like I really just out of sheer luck was able to do these different things throughout my career, and really grateful for that.
Yeah. So based on the timeline, there's been a big through line in the fire service, and anyone that was working at the time, you were working as a firefighter, granted on the West Coast when 9/11 happens, right? And that changed the fire service forever. Obviously it changed American culture forever. It changed so many things.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the West Coast at that time?
I remember it's interesting, right? And so budgets are tight everywhere. And there's always questions that come up around, taxpayer dollars and, what firefighters do and the value of the fire department in a community, all these things. I'm sure like everywhere, like, you start seeing, never forget, the community's super appreciative. I think there was more of a light shined on not just the tragedy that occurred, but just, wait a second, what do our firefighters do? Like, are our firefighters really out there risking their lives for our community? And so I think there was more curiosity around what we do as firefighters. There was more awareness around not only, the skill it requires to do the job, but also the inherent risk of doing the job. And even, okay, now we're seeing maybe some budget stuff that's kind of, oh, well, geez, maybe we should fund this and fund that. And so that, happened, I think, for a period of time. And again, like so many things, out of sight, out of mind, when that mantra of never forget was going around, I think folks do eventually forget, or at least it's not front of mind. And so that curiosity dwindles, that support dwindles, and now you're kind of back to clawing and scratching, doing more with less.
Mm-hmm. So as you're climbing through the ranks and you're obviously gaining different levels of influence, and you always have this kind of back end knowledge base and excitement for and desire to cause or create change inside the physical fitness and health and wellness space of the fire service.
Yeah.
What are you identifying early on as, hey, we're doing this off, or we need to change this? And what are some of the earliest things that you start putting into action to make change?
Yeah. So I'm huge into structure. Like if you look at everything else we do in the fire service, we have standard operating procedures, we have policies, we have all that stuff. We have all these frameworks around how we operate. And so you had mentioned, firefighters as athletes. So on one side of that coin, someone might take that and be like, oh, I'm expected to be some elite athlete and be super agile. And in my mind, that's not it at all. In my mind, when we talk about athlete, what model can we look to answer that question you just asked me? And so one of my really good friends, his name's Darcy Norman. He and I went to college together at Washington State University. He went the physical therapy route. He was affiliated for the longest time, if you know of Athletes Performance, now Exos. They're one of the global leaders in human performance. He came up through that organization, and he's been one of the highest levels of human performance. He was on the team for the German national soccer team that won the World Cup. He, that's legit. He was on the performance team for the U.S. men's national team. He's currently the head of human performance for Chicago Fire FC. And so, he and I have had these conversations ever since our college days. We're both studying exercise science and kind of learning the same framework. And I go over here and I'm in the fire service, and he goes over here and he's in sport. And so even just recently we're talking about it, and I was asking him, like, hey, what does it look like? What's the framework that you provide for your players to make sure that they're ready to go on game day? And he said, well, first of all, there's the mental health side and also mindset. There's the medical side. There's the physical fitness side. There's the performance coaching side. There's the nutrition. Like, he's just going down this whole list of things that his athletes have access to, and all the frameworks and the structure in the sporting world to actually provide that. And then I look at the fire service and I'm like, well, we have some of that. Like, you look at the work that's being done by the IFF and IFC for these wellness fitness initiatives. And I was just at FDIC and they're talking about the updates to the WFI. I'm very curious to see what that looks like. But when you look at even the 4th edition, it's all very similar. It's behavioral health, it's medical, it's, if it's recovery and rehab, if you're off injured, and return to work stuff, data collection, injury prevention. It's all the same things. And so it's my dream that someday, from some sort of a central hub, and I really believe that the IFF and IFC could move the needle on this, we adopt this sports organization structure for human performance as it relates to firefighters. Mm-hmm. And what does that look like? Well, we have, and even in alignment with 1580, we've got physical fitness testing in our agencies. We've got physical training programs in our agencies. We've got nutrition, consulting and access to nutrition. We have really robust return to work procedures to make sure that people aren't just rushing back to work to protect their overtime or, their sick leave. They're actually really ready to come back to work. Behavioral health, data collection, like all that stuff exists. So it's my dream that we have a central resource that all agencies can look to start adopting these things. And then we look at problem solving in terms of, how can folks have access to some of this stuff?
What do you see as some of the blind spots in the current landscape that people just are either not seeing or not giving enough weight to?
Well, I think that's the thing. It's, I'm a little biased, whether people see it or maybe they don't appreciate it. So if we just look at another analogy, right? If we look at our apparatus and you're going to buy this new fire engine and obviously that apparatus requires maintenance because you want to get 20 years out of it. You just spent $1 million on a fire engine. So, when you look at the human performance side of it for firefighters, budget is maybe the main restricting thing. Like, hey, we don't have the budget for firefighter fitness. We don't have the budget for firefighter health. We don't have the budget to bring in coaches. That's not in the budget, not in the budget. Okay, well, have you ever heard any fire department say, hey, you know what? We're not going to do oil changes on our fire engines because it's not in the budget. We're not going to change the tires on the fire engines because it's not in the budget. Like, that just doesn't happen. So I think that's one side of it is how can we get agencies to embrace this athlete identity in such a way that they invest in it the same way a sports organization would invest in it. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, I was a proud union member. There's so much that we do well, but I get it. Like I worked in an organization where we had great labor management relationship. It would never occur to me that I was going to get fired because I did X, Y, or Z on a fitness test. So I get where some of that fear exists, but how do we adopt this athlete identity as a union as well, to the point where there's no fear around it. Like, there's no fear that you're going to lose your job. It's all supportive. It's all like, hey, here's the framework that we're going to make sure you have. In the same way that we maintain our apparatus, we're going to maintain our people, and we're going to invest in that, and we're going to support it through the union as well. And then the third tier of that is the individual, right? So it's all about buy-in. So we've got to get agency buy-in. We have to get union buy-in. And most importantly, we have to get individual buy-in, because if the individual does not buy into it, they're not going to do it. They're just not going to do it. And so that comes back to a few things. One, comes back to, well, are we hiring the right people where we don't have to convince them? Two, okay, maybe this wasn't part of your life, but is there a way that you can just look at the athlete identity, not from a lead standpoint, but from a supportive standpoint, and how you might live your life, whether it's how you sleep, how you eat, how you manage your stress, how you exercise. And there's, it's a bell curve, like there's different ways to do it, but can you at least get there as a firefighter that, hey, I recognize this is important. I'm going to look at ways I can really embrace this. And then of course the community, because if the community doesn't buy into it, again, we're coming back to some limited budget. So again, my long-winded way of saying, at the end of the day, it boils down to buy-in. And in my experience, there's those four categories where buy-in is required. It's agency, it's union, it's individual, and it's community. So I
love this idea, right? And I also love this idea. The thing that you've talked about, which my department doesn't do, and I know other departments don't all do, and I will address the reason why, or the concern, at least what we just talked about, which is like ongoing physical fitness. We all do some sort of test to get on the job, but all too often there's no like, well, then now you have to maintain that for a period of time. And maybe,
Right.
Every decade the standard falls down to be commensurate with their age or whatever it might be. There's ways to do that. But the big pushback is always going to be, well, I don't want to lose my job because, whatever thing, right? I can't run a mile and a half in 12 minutes anymore. Pick the metric.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you that this is the optimal fire service when we have some sort of continuing expectation. How does a department take that idea, put it into action, and hold a standard without disenfranchising a huge portion of their membership, or frankly, having to get rid of some people who can't do the standard anymore?
Yeah. So again, I'll just look at the Bellingham Fire Department as a living example of it. And over in different timeframes, we kind of talked about even the demographic in the organization. And so going all the way back to 1996, first of all, the first step is you have to have something in place. So if you've got, for us, we had medical testing was mandatory. And the labor and union agreed on that. And if someone had a major medical issue, they had to take care of that. Like, hey, you've got a heart problem. Before you come back to work, you have to get your heart problem taken care of. Or, hey, you've got your precancerous, you have precancer polyps in your colon. Like, let's get that figured out. Like before it's not reversible. And many people over my career caught things that were very manageable when they caught them that would have been terminal years later. And so that alone saved lives of our members, independent of the value to the organization of the medical side. And then the fitness testing twice a year, it was not mandatory. It was not mandatory, but the department had a monetary incentive. It's like, hey, if you participate in this twice a year, we'll pay you $200. Or if you can demonstrate to the chief that you consistently participate in physical training throughout the year, he'll pay you $200, like as part of the fitness incentive. So it's not punitive. You're not putting that, it's not a stick. You're incentivizing people with a carrot, not a stick. And what happened, but it didn't happen overnight, is you're through that, and also, peer, I don't want to say peer pressure, but let's use the word culture. In my simple brain, culture is just, hey, what's the overwhelming philosophy of the people in our department? Well, when I first got hired, it was not fitness. But over time, because of the way the organization presented it, that shifted. And because we're hiring people that already came in with a mindset that was in alignment with the organization, it shifted. And so, like I said, fast forward all these years, it would not occur to a new firefighter in Bellingham that they don't work out on duty. It would not occur to a new firefighter in Bellingham that they don't cook a healthy meal together. Like, it just wouldn't occur to them because they've never seen it different than that. And so to answer your question, I get it, man. Like I'm not sitting here saying we have to impose this. I'm not sitting here saying that we have to do it overnight. What I'm suggesting is there's these little simple strategies that departments can start to implement within what they have access to in the short term. Start setting some long-term goals, whether it's, hey, in the future, we're going to increase our budget for this. In the future, we're going to add more to this. But just to start, here's where we're going to start. And it's going to be non-punitive. It's going to be, not mandatory. And let's just get some buy-in. And I think, and you see it another thing, like firefighters want to do good work. Like that, at the end of the day, firefighters want to do good work. And if they're feeling supported in achieving that versus, somehow belittled or somehow forced to do something, it's just a whole different outcome.
Mm-hmm. So to expand on that, I guess a little more, how does a department deal with someone that has let go? They no longer care. Like, they're like, for an unsultry term, they're a liability, right?
Yeah.
Like I still am sympathetic to the idea that you've dedicated your life to public service and all these things, but you no longer come off the truck as an asset to the response.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Well, and so that is a whole different thing, right? And so if you look at what firefighters are required to do, whether it's, hey, if you're a firefighter, you physically need to deploy the hose, throw the ground ladder, rescue the fire. Like, we have all these, like, if you look at the NFP standards are pretty clear around the firefighting skills that we have to perform as firefighters. Same thing, if you're an engine operator, you have to drive safely and you have to pump the engine effectively. And if you're at the pump panel and you physically or mentally cannot get it into pump gear or cannot get water to the end of the nozzle, that's not acceptable. And I don't think anyone, whether you're on the labor side or the management side, can argue against, maybe taking someone out of, off the line that cannot do those things. Because, that's a liability to the city. Someone dies. Okay, chief, let me get this straight. You observed this firefighter in a training environment or in emergency response fail to execute multiple times and you did not intervene. Like you can't not do that. And so this is where it comes back in my mind to you have to clearly state expectations, whether it's for performance as a firefighter or even, and this is where I think fitness ties into this. And then as an agency, you have to commit to helping people meet those expectations. And then, and only then, can you hold them accountable for not meeting them. So that's the first question is if someone's failing in their job for any reason, hey, was the expectation clearly communicated, yes or no? Yes. Okay, great. Did we as an organization absolutely provide adequate support to meeting that expectation? Or, 360, did we? Yes. Okay, well then we can now look at how do we best support this person? What accountability measures can we start to implement that on the front end of it is, for one, the lowest level of intervention necessary. Two, it's a spirit of support and helping that person. It's not punitive to start. And then, and only then, if it gets to the point where the employee is just not willing to do it, which I guess could happen, or for whatever reason, just not able to do it, then, whatever action needs to happen at that point, that's what happens. But but in my experience, you really can take this very systematic approach to it. And again, whether you're on the labor side or the management side, if you know as an employee that this is exactly how all of this is going to work, and we're really committed to supporting you first and foremost. And let's take the firefighter you mentioned, like, they're not connected or not. Why? What's going on? Maybe they had a bad call, or maybe there's something at home. Like, let's just not judge this person on the surface. Let's figure out through peer support or whatever else. Let's turn a couple rocks over and see if we can provide deeper support to this person beyond what we're seeing, on the surface.
So if we go back to your time in training as the training chief, there's this conversation that I hear in terms of how do we utilize our physicality in the academy? Should we be hitting the bench and the squat or throwing sandbags, or should we be doing firefighter activities that are physical to, exercise? Or where is the balance between the two? Is there pros and cons to either side? What's the thought?
Oh boy, here we go. And if I get, you might have to filter me a little bit because I'll talk for 5 hours.
I love a good soapbox. Go for it.
This is at the crux of everything, I personally have experienced and I believe in. So if a lot of people know Dave Dodson from his work with The Art of Reading Smoke. Dave Dodson also wrote a book called Fire Department Incident Safety Officer. Amazing book. As a captain or anyone that's in a leader position, I couldn't recommend that book highly enough, whether you're a safety officer or not. Tons of gems there. But one of the quotes in that book talking about aggressiveness in firefighting operations, he talks about arbitrary aggressiveness versus intellectual aggressiveness. Arbitrary being on a whim, without information, often driven by emotion. The intellectual is well-informed in a systematic fashion with purpose. And so to me, I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Everything we talk about in terms of physical fitness has that same kind of message. Is your approach to fitness completely arbitrary? Is it on a whim? Is it absolutely random without considering the outcome at all? Or is it intentional? And you have a very clear sense of what you're trying to do, and you reverse engineer that to build the program that's going to support the outcome that you want. And so, this is where I just geek out because, when I'm studying exercise science and all these things we're studying, it's all about, progressive overload. specific adaptation to impose demands, energy system development, movement patterns versus muscle groups. Like there's all these things that you learn in exercise science that you apply them to athletes because that's the mindset around how athletes should move and perform and function on the field. And we just haven't done that in the fire service. And that's where I just like, oh man, what if we could apply all this stuff to the fire service? And so coming back to Recruit Academy, well, what's our goal in Recruit Academy? And I always said, number one rule in Recruit Academy is don't get hurt, don't get injured.
Yeah.
And number two rule in Recruit Academy, don't get hurt. Because if a recruit gets hurt, they're off the field. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get the training they need. As an organization, we're not going to get that. So there's things we can do as an organization to support them to make sure they don't get hurt. And there's things that we can teach them in the gym that will help them on the job to not get hurt. So if I take a step back, and now this is where I'm going to get on my soapbox just a little bit. So if we know that we want to be very intentional about how we're going to support firefighters through physical training, whether it's in academy or in operations, the very first step is, and I look at this like a BC looks at an incident action plan, right? So first thing we do is we size up. And this is Dave Dotson too. Like the first thing you do in intellectual firefighting is your size up. And so, and you and I'm going to ask you to do a baseline fitness assessment. I'm going to ask you to do a baseline movement screen. I'm going to ask you to give me your baseline body composition. We're doing a size up. We're getting our baseline. We're figuring out where we're starting relative to where we want to go. The next thing is strategy. Well, how does strategy apply to fitness? Well, in my experience, there's really three broad strategies. There's general fitness, which is like you're saying, you're training muscle groups, you're doing your bench press and you're doing your curls. And the goal is muscle growth and muscle strength. Like that's the goal. Okay, cool. Another strategy in my mind is functional fitness. So functional fitness, and I mentioned Athletes Performance, Exos, Mark Verstegen, that whole crew. To me, that is functional fitness. And what you're doing now is you're moving away from training muscle groups. You're training through all planes of motion. You're doing intentional energy system development. You're prioritizing recovery so that you can perform at a high level. That's functional. To me, tactical fitness for firefighters is much more specific than that. Now we're looking at the very specific demands of the job, and all of our physical training revolves around that. And if you look at sports, when they do their annual training plan, that's exactly what they do. They have, in the off season, their general training phase, they have their functional or specific phase, and then they have a sport-specific training phase. And that's specific to football for football players, basketball for basketball players, all that. So then, okay, well, what are our tactics? If our strategy is tactical fitness, what tactics are we going to use in support of that? Well, to me, there's 4 types of workouts that support tactical fitness. One is moderate intensity strength training, and that's not targeting muscle groups. You are still targeting movement patterns. You're loading them with simple tools, but you're doing it at less than high intensity. You're doing it at a very moderate load, moderate intensity, focusing on your movement quality, and there's a real ability to develop strength there. The next is aerobic training. We talk a lot about zone 2 training, aerobic health, aerobic base, all these things. That's important for firefighters. And so that's going to be part of that. And I like to tag a flexibility routine on that, because what a perfect way to kind of prompt your body now to relax into a flexibility session than some steady state cardio. The third is now our metabolic conditioning. This is your high intensity interval training. Again, based on movement patterns, the intervals that we program, some intervals are more heavily geared towards your aerobic energy systems. Some intervals are more geared towards your anaerobic. And we kind of hear, oh, aerobic or anaerobic. It's basically, are we doing endurance or are we doing power? And that's based on these intervals that we program. So, and the high intensity is like, hey, you've already kind of practiced this at moderate. You know how you can operate safely. Add the gas to it. Go hard. Get your heart rate up there. So that's metabolic conditioning. And then the fourth is your active recovery. So now you're going to do some light walking. You're going to hit your foam roll. You're going to go through some dynamic mobility drills, and all 4 of those things. And I just sent you a kind of a training calendar around your shift schedule. The way I program that for shift workers is I pop those 4 types of workouts in a progressive program that's periodized over a period of time related to your shift schedule. In a recruit academy, it's a totally different ballgame, because never in your career are you doing more, physical work. Like the physical work of recruit academy is unlike any other part in your career. And I get, it's frustrating to me when I hear about recruits that either are doing a workout of the day based on what the instructor wants to do, and there's no accounting for the occupational training load. There's no accounting for any sort of progression. It's just random. I don't see a lot of value in using the morning workouts as a testing tool. Like, oh, we're going to test your mettle. We're going to kick your ass. We're going to see how good you are in the gym. We don't need to do that in the gym. We can do that on the drill ground. We should do that on the drill ground. That comes back to everything we talked about for evaluations. Like, in the gym, if our recruits are working 410s, we would basically program, and kind of coming back to what I was just saying, like they would do their moderate strength day on Monday, their metabolic conditioning on Tuesday, within reason, depending on how they're feeling. They would do their active recovery on Wednesday morning and aerobic training on Thursday. At home, we would give them homework. They would just do some light to moderate circuit training on Friday, active recovery Saturday, Sunday. Monday morning, they show up. How do you feel, first and foremost? How's your body feeling? Be honest. Oh, I'm feeling a little, and we did it very intentionally. So I've got the whole manual I can show you. It's just like, hey, why wouldn't we be very intentional about how we implement our physical training for recruits in academy? And one more quick anecdote, and then I'll finally get off this long-winded soapbox, is that there was a recruit academy that brought me in. They said, hey, our fitness trainer was doing a ton of sprint work with our recruits, and we've got one torn Achilles and one busted knee, and can you come in and kind of finish the academy with your program? I'm like, yeah, no problem. So I came in and kind of did a needs assessment and implemented all this stuff we're talking about, and they didn't have another injury for the rest of the academy. And to say that, oh, we expect them to be broken at the end of academy, that's not true. I expect them to be more fit at the end of academy and feel great when they graduate, because we were intentional about their total training load from the start of academy to the end.
Mm-hmm. So how do you factor in the physicality of the actual work into that?
Yeah. So there's a term in the sporting world called total training load, and it's basically rating of perceived exertion times total time. And so let's look at that on two extremes. If you're doing hazmat operations and you're sitting in a classroom for 8 hours a day, which I know you love to do, this is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah.
Obviously very important, but in terms of total training load, it's going to be very, very, very low, because your rating of perceived exertion is low, and it's so low that the time that you're exposed to that isn't a huge factor. So your physical training isn't going to be impacted by that. Now, if you're doing a week of firefighter survival, and you're in your full gear and you're doing the Denver drill and you're doing drags and carries and you're doing all this other stuff, guess what? That is extreme total training load. On those weeks in our recruit academy, we did not do any moderate or high intensity physical training. It was all active recovery, maybe some light aerobic training and flexibility. We did not program higher intensity physical training in those weeks, because we did not want to compete with the demands of the occupational training. We wanted to support the demands of the occupational training.
But it only serves to make sense. You just have to take the time to prioritize all that in a training schedule, which I think sometimes it's not necessarily done. Right.
And again, no judgment here. This isn't me, judging or, oh, you should do this or you should do that. I'm not saying that at all. For me, this just comes back to our conversation around, well, what's the value of using terms like athlete? What's the value of looking at the sporting world and the lessons we can learn in the fire service? And so if I call up my friend Darcy Norma and I say, hey man, you're preseason and you're doing two-a-days on the field, what does that look like when you're doing your physical training? And he's going to map out this whole thing that he's pre-planned. He's definitely taking the time to be intentional about the physical training so it supports their on-field training. It doesn't compete with it. So there's an opportunity for us in the fire service to take that same approach, not looking too far than just the sports model to adopt that. So again, no judgment. I'm not, not holier than thou, but I'm passionate about this stuff because I'm interested in it, and I see so much value in it.
So as we skipped a chunk in the middle, and that's fine. We're going to talk more times in the future, so we'll get back to your career at some point.
Yeah.
But as you look to exit the fire service and now are doing this kind of quote unquote in retirement, but what's your vision for Firefighter Peak Performance going forward? And then as we kind of talk through that, then we'll kind of get into what our mission is together. Well, hey there, gang. If you could do me a favor and just subscribe and like this, and I hope you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to like it. But if you do like it, if you could hit the button to say that, I appreciate that. It makes a big deal if you give it a review on any of the services. Follow the show on social media. Share it when you see it. It doesn't take much to just hit a like, and it makes a huge difference to me. And I appreciate it. Thank you. This podcast is brought to you in part by Hikes Boots. You can tell a lot about a brand by the way they choose to advertise, and Hikes didn't ask me to say anything specific. What they did was they sent me a couple pairs of structural fire boots. They sent me their Fire Eagle Air and the Fire Eagle Extreme. They've been awesome. I literally don't have a bad thing to say about them. They're super comfortable. They feel like a tennis shoe almost. The Extreme is very interesting. So the Fire Eagle Extreme is a lace up boot. So it has like a thing you pull on and it tightens on your leg and it feels like super supportive and wonderful. I was skeptical of it at first, if I'm being honest, and they're super comfortable and I love them. Yeah, if you want more information about it, check them out at hikesusa.com. That's HAIXUSA.com. Check out the show notes for a direct link. Ragaku. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Ragaku Analytical Devices, who are the folks that have been perfecting the 1064 nanometer ramen longer than most of us have even been in hazmat. And they just launched their new 4th generation handheld analyzer, the Icon X. It's built specifically for real world stuff hazmat teams deal with on a daily basis. We're talking about dirty powders, mixed materials, dyes, colors, and all the things that make other instruments throw a tantrum. The 1064 nanometer laser means reduced fluorescence. So you get a fast, reliable chemical ID in under a minute instead of staring at that blank screen, wondering what went wrong. And this new platform isn't just an upgrade. It's a whole new toolbox. It supports new accessories, including standoff analysis, so you can get the answers without getting too close. And if you want an analyzer that's evolving right alongside the hazmat world, check out Ragaku's newest ramen at ragakuanalytical.com or check the show notes. Back to the show.
Yeah. So, man, I reflect on my career, and I had such an amazing experience. And at the same time, I hit a lot of the same roadblocks that firefighters do. I was divorced once. I've had 10 surgeries. I've had, mental health crisis, multiple times in my career. Just the stress of firefighting and shift work, all the things, right? And back in my day, we just didn't have a lot of resources in managing that. And even recently, my son, he's 19 years old. He just turned 20, actually. He's a baseball athlete and still pursuing that. But he's interested in a career in the fire service. He said, hey, I think I want to be a firefighter. And he said that to me. And at first, I'm just like, boom, like I'm excited, I'm proud, and I'm just like stoked. And then I'm looking at this naive, cute, untarnished face. He's got this sparkle in his eye. I'm like, oh, man, I don't know if I want that for you, because I don't want you to be all old and beat up and broken down like me, So, but then I thought about it. I talked with my wife, and I'm like, you know what? I feel really confident that if I can give him, I call it a toolbox. It's this resilience toolbox that he'll have before he even starts his career. In the top of the toolbox are the everyday things, his fitness, nutrition, sleep. It's right there. For anything else, hey, you lift out the top tray, you get into some of the bigger tools. Now you're looking into stress management, maybe some of your therapy and counseling, your physical therapy, chiropractic, like all your clinical support. Like, man, like really become familiar with the tools in your toolbox and use them so that you're healthy through your career. So I just am I'm grateful for all the support that I received in navigating my career. I retired, not unbroken, but, certainly reasonably healthy and feeling pretty good. And I want to pay it forward, man. Like, I just feel like there's more that I want to give. When we're firefighters, we do have a sense of purpose attached to that. And I'll share with you that when I retired, I was really surprised by the depth of loss that I felt there. The grief attached to that felt very similar to the loss of a loved one. I was not expecting that. And it took me, it's only been 3 months and I'm still kind of sorting through that. And so to have an opportunity to stay connected to the fire service, first of all, and to do that in a way that's supporting like other firefighters in the areas of fitness, health, and wellness, I mean, that it's not the same. I'll just say that it's not the same as the purpose we have as firefighters on the floor, but man, it's helping me a lot. I'm deeply committed to that. So I'm in the short term developing coaching programs. My phase 2, I'm going to have online fitness programs for firefighters. And my dream and my vision down the road is to have this really comprehensive platform that firefighters can access, whether it's fitness programs, wellness education modules, kind of all the things that I hope adds value for firefighters looking to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm. And I can't say enough about, we've been talking for the last few weeks, and like the amount of support that you're offering through your program is insane. It's like it's so cool. And the resources you're using, the resources you're providing, it's insane. But so before we get into that, let me just give a preference to the audience of kind of how we got together and what we're hoping to accomplish. And then let's walk through like setting the groundwork. Cause the reality is when this episode comes out, we will be on the Wednesday of week 1.
Week
right?
1, yeah.
So that's looking into next week from where we're recording this. So this will come out on that Wednesday. We start the program officially the Monday preceding this. And so what happened is a couple weeks ago, I got to the point in all reality, and anyone that listens to the show knows that I've had kind of a wild ride for the last year or so. I went to the Center of Excellence, and through that mental health ride and kind of all this insanity in my life, for lack of a better term, I got fat. I stopped prioritizing my physical fitness. I stopped working out. I was eating less great than I should be. And it's catching up to me. And I had a moment where I said, I don't want to do this. I want to like live up to the expectation that I hold for myself, which is that I should be able to perform in all the ways that I want to. I don't want my body to be a reason that I can't do something that I want to do. And it's less about like, who doesn't want to like look good with their shirt off, but it's much less about that than it is about being able to perform at the highest level of this career field. Yeah. And so when I think about that, I go, well, I've cut down before. All actuality, lesser known fact about me for some, I've actually done the firefighter calendar twice. It's not my most proud moment, but it has happened. But for that, I was in pretty good shape when I did that. And so I have done the cuts before, and I've never done it in a way that anyone on planet Earth would call healthy. It's always been like, I'm going to work out twice a day and eat 1,500 calories. And it's bad for me. My wife hates it because I'm such a jerk because I'm miserable. And so I was like, if I'm going to do it this time, I want to enlist an expert to help me along the journey and bring me to the point that I want to be correctly, safely, healthfully, all these things. So I reach out to Ryan and I say, hey man, would you be interested in helping me? I think that like your resume is amazing. You have all the fire service experience. You're obviously associated with CRACKYL magazine, which is super cool, but you have this whole model that looks super interesting to me. And the nice guy that he is, he says, let's do it. And so for the next 16 weeks, well, now it'll be 15 and a half weeks by the time this comes out, we're committed, or I'm committed, you're committed to helping me on this journey and so yesterday I went and I did an in-body scan. So I have all my true to life metrics of my body fat percentage and my muscle composition and my body weight and all those things. And we're doing some baseline fitness testing, all that stuff. And hopefully I feel very confident with your guidance. 16 weeks from now, I'm going to look very different and I'm going to more importantly, feel very different. Yeah. So now that we have the preference laid or the context laid, let's talk about some of the stuff that we're going to work on together, some of the baseline things that we're trying to establish, and then how we're going to track those metrics over time and what we're going to do to move the ball along the way.
Yes. Yes. So again, I'm big on frameworks and structure. And so if we take a giant step back and we just look at, there's 3 pillars of firefighter peak performance. For me, those are mindset, lifestyle, and then performance training. So mindset, that just comes back to everything we talked about in terms of kind of, we don't have to use the word athlete, but somehow embracing the athlete identity, and for, as you and I work together, everything you just said, like, hey, I'm in on this. I want my body to perform at a certain way. I want to be healthy. So that's all. It starts with mindset, because as we talked about, if you don't have the mindset to do it, you're just not going to be successful. So which you do. One of the things that resonated with me, and I'm excited to work with you, is we're very similar in a lot of ways, where we're very structure oriented. It's like, hey man, you give me a list, I'm going to check off everything on that list.
Yeah.
If any of my old coworkers listen to this, they're going to laugh, because I was widely known as kind of the checklist guy, and I was very regimented in how I approached things. So you and I are similar in that, and that'll make it fun for me working with you. So mindset is one. Lifestyle is the other thing. So what I did was I took your scan, your body composition, and kind of some of your goals. I know that you want to kind of recomp your body composition, but we can't sacrifice performance to do that. So I've got formulas I use to calculate your total calories, your protein, your carbohydrates, your fat, and I present that to you in an app called Chronometer, and I can monitor that. So I'll generate a report every week. I'll see how much water you're drinking. I'll see all your nutrition numbers. And every 2 weeks, we'll reevaluate your body comp, and either we're on track or we're off track. And if we're off track, okay, well, what do we need to tweak to get back on track? Or if you're like, hey man, I just can't eat that many carbs, or if there's something even logistically that isn't working for you, we can make adjustments. So that's the nutrition side of it. I think you mentioned maybe getting a wearable Whoop band, and then we can see your sleep, we can see your readiness, and that will also add kind of value to how we adjust your lifestyle stuff. And then and so mindset, lifestyle, and then performance training, last but not least. And so I did get on my soapbox. I did kind of explain to you my firefighter fitness framework for putting all this together. And for you and I, it starts with size up. So I have what's called a firefighter tactical fitness assessment. And there are 6 exercises that are based on firefighting tasks, movement patterns that you would see. Basically, if you're first in on a fire and you're the firefighter and you're going to deploy the hose, force the door, approach the fire and complete your overhaul, I've got a series of tasks that kind of mimic that. And we're going to measure how much weight did you use for each exercise? What was your heart rate during this workout? How long did it take you to finish this workout? How many reps did you do? So we'll have a bunch of objective metrics that we can measure as a baseline. And then as you progress through the program and you repeat that fitness assessment, you'll see objectively your progress just based on that alone. And then, so we've got your body comp we'll keep track of. We'll measure your firefighter tactical fitness assessment. That assessment also has some more subjective. So movement quality, you'll evaluate that, your intensity, discomfort, focus, and dexterity. And so we use this a lot in Recruit Academy, those more subjective things. And I'm curious to hear kind of how you experience that in the gym, but I also encourage you to take those same tools into your firefighting. So whether you're on the drill ground or you're on a fire and you're doing these things, like you're deploying hose, throwing a ladder, whatever, be aware. Hey, how's my movement quality? What intensity do I feel like I'm working right now? Do I have any discomfort in my body? How's my focus? How's my dexterity for tying knots or making hose couplings, things like that? It all matters. All that stuff matters. And if you don't think about it and you're never training for it, you're just hoping it all works out on the job. Where the work we're going to do, I'm going to teach you in the gym to really be mindful of all of these things, so that when you are on the job, you're just going to be like, holy shit, this feels amazing. So that's my goal with that. So we'll do our baseline. And as I mentioned, I've got your whole workout program mapped out around your shift schedule. And like I said, man, it's so important that firefighters have, I think it's important to have a plan. If you have a destination, what's the quickest way to get from point A to point B? Let's map that out versus kind of just randomly driving around and hoping that you get there at some point. So, we've talked about your goals. You're going to start your phase 1. It's about 5 weeks is phase 1. The emphasis is going to be more strength endurance. So a lot of your intervals are going to be longer. You're going to be kind of building an endurance base around that. And then as we progress through your program, the middle phase 2, will be more kind of strength emphasis. And then at the end, phase 3 is more power emphasis. Your intervals will be shorter and your movements will be more explosive in that context. But yeah, so that's kind of a real quick overview of, we're going to do your size up. We're going to do your programming. I use an app called Chronometer to manage your nutrition. I use an app called Bridge Athletic to assign your fitness programming. And all of it is all visible to me on the back end. And then we'll just be trading information back and forth. We'll be checking in every week. And that's the plan. And I'm going to do the same workout program with you. So your week 1 is also going to be my week 1. Oh,
amazing. Yeah. And like, I seriously cannot oversell the idea of just like how all encompassing and in totality the program feels. It's just like, I was talking to my partner yesterday at work and I was just like, man, this is so amazing. Like the work, he's a big, he's on our peer fitness team, and he's a big like CrossFit guy, and he's in great shape, and he just couldn't believe how robust and amazing the program was. And I'm just so impressed, so excited. I mean, we're technically in week 0, so I have been like tracking my calories and doing those kind of things. And, but I'm super excited to technically be underway. But I do want to get a couple thought processes, especially the one that we haven't necessarily talked about specifically is nutrition, which is my caveman brain when I've dieted before in the past. It's like, as least amount of calories I could possibly eat, the largest deficit I could possibly occur. If 3,500 calories is 1 pound, I'm going to like try to eat like, I'm going to starve to death. Right.
Yeah.
And, obviously I know it's flawed, but nonetheless that is, and I can't tell you the amount of firefighters that I know, and probably you've encountered, that are like the same way. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to eat 100 calories a day. And then I'll be, so talk to me about like, what a good, healthy, even an aggressive spectrum of calorie deficit looks like. And then what's optimal nutritional macros look like? I mean, obviously there's a huge range. Someone might say, if you need all these carbs. Someone might say, just eat ribeye steaks. There's a spectrum. What's your thought process on it?
Yeah, and here's another topic. Of course, we could just go deep into it, but I'll just start by saying I don't believe in any dogma around nutrition. Like some people say, plant-based or paleo or keto or Mediterranean or. Mm-hmm. Hey, at the end of the day, everyone's different and everyone responds differently to nutrition. And it's also important to note that I do have my minor in nutrition from college. I've done deep work in that. I'm not a registered dietitian. And so anything beyond basic like advice and these conversations we're going to have, I feel comfortable doing that. But if anyone that's got any medical issues, diabetes, like food sensitivities, insulin sensitivity, like you should be talking to a registered dietitian. There should be some clinical care supporting you there. But coming back to just kind of the things we're talking about and the way that we're going to do our stuff is everyone, it's all about energy. And, I don't like to say a calorie is a calorie because I don't believe that to be true. But if we look at your basal metabolic rate, that's the energy that your body burns at rest. So in a 24-hour period, if you did nothing, your body's going to burn, let's just say for easy numbers, 1,500 calories. And that's no matter what. Okay, cool. Well, how active are you? Are you sedentary? Are you lightly active, moderately active, or heavily active? For the work that you do as a firefighter, for the training that we're going to do in the gym, you're going to be moderately active. So now we've got your 1,500 calories plus, let's just say for easy math, 800 calories that you're going to burn doing all your activities. So now we're at 2,300 calories baseline. So if we want to lose, we don't want to lose weight. We want to lose body fat. And so in order to lose body fat, we've got to be a little bit more conservative around the deficit that we're creating. So maybe 300 to 400 calories to start. So if we landed at 2,300 calories, I'm going to raise that because I don't want to say it to be too low because it's not going to. So let's just say this: your calories are 2,600 calories, and that's about 300 calories below what you totally burn. You burn, I think, 2,800 calories. So we're doing a modest calorie deficit. We're doing a higher protein, about 1 gram per pound of protein. We're doing kind of moderate carbs and a little bit lower fat to start. And so that's the math. The math is, for anyone, what's your basal metabolic rate? Are you looking to gain weight in terms of lean muscle? Or are you looking to lose weight? If you're looking to gain weight, well, then you should have a modest surplus, just a little bit of a surplus so that you can feed protein synthesis and lean body growth without adding extra fat. Or if you're trying to lose fat, then it's a subtle deficit and you're trying to preserve or even gain. It's called body recompositioning. You can still add muscle and lose fat. It's just a much slower process. And for you and I, we've got 16 weeks to do this thing. So we're just going to take it nice and easy in terms of how we approach your calorie deficit.
So when you think about that, that calorie deficit, you mentioned it, that recomp, and like, so for a rube like me that doesn't quite like, I very much think about it as calories in, calories out, and like there's this whole nother layer of like the thermal effect of food and blah blah blah. But when I think about recomp, it's like, wait a second. So how do you recomp if you have to be a deficit to lose fat and you have to be in a surplus to gain muscle? How do you eat in order for both of those things to occur at the same time?
Yeah, and that's where kind of the protein intake combined with your training approach can help you accomplish that. And and this is where also having levers to pull is nice too. So some other strategies we can look at is we can cycle carbohydrates and cycle calories as well. So if we look at you as an example, and we know that you're going to have, let's just say on average, 2 moderate to high intensity training days, and you're also going to have a couple lower and light intensity training days. One strategy we might look at, depending on how you're responding to our initial approach, and again, we're going to recheck every 2 weeks. So if we look at that, 2 weeks from now, and you're like, oh, we're not quite there, here's some levers we can pull. Is we can now take a step back, look at your training calendar. Okay, Jake, on your moderate and high intensity days, we're going to keep this the same, and we're going to emphasize higher carbs because of your total training load on these days. And then on your lower intensity and lighter intensity recovery days, we're going to lower your calories and we're going to lower your carbs to because you're not burning as much on those days. And then take a step back and kind of to answer your question, well, how do you do this recomposition? Because your calorie and your work is going to wave like this over the period of 16 weeks. And again, strategically, this is where, again, in my mind, a calorie is not a calorie. Is if you're eating Tom Thumb donuts and doing shout out Tom Thumb donuts.
There you go. Yeah.
If you're getting 2,000 calories of donuts versus high quality protein, that's your body's just going to respond differently to that. So in answer to your question, it's in terms of pulling levers, it's how much protein are we taking in versus total calories, and are we looking to at some point cycle our calorie intake and our carb intake around our total training load.
So very often the conversation is what we're having right now, which is macro conversation, right?
Yeah.
Carbs versus fats versus proteins.
Yeah.
Where do micronutrients come into play in terms of gaining, losing weight, total health optimization? How does that come into play?
Yeah. And so even if you look at your Chronometer app, you're going to start seeing like micronutrients, minerals, vitamin D, magnesium, even ratios like sodium, potassium, and all these things. So if you think of our bodies as high performance cars, sports cars, let's say sports cars, and what kind of fuel are you putting in there? Is the carburetor clogged or not? Like, is the radiator fluid topped off like this? So there's all these little systems in our bodies, our hormones and everything that's all kind of operating hopefully at optimal performance. And so that's where, again, as you're monitoring your nutrition intake, does any of this need to be supplemented? And so those are deeper questions. And again, like to go a lot deeper into some of that stuff is probably outside of my scope in terms of, really getting into like medical grade supplementation and stuff, but I will share with you, one of my good friends is Dr. Sanjay Schweig at the California Center for Functional Medicine, and I just enrolled in the functional medicine program there. And so they did a big nutrition assessment for me, and I was missing some stuff. And I eat pretty good, but I was still missing. I think zinc was not quite optimal. Magnesium, they felt, would help me sleep a little bit better. My vitamin D I've been supplementing with that, and they recommend I continue doing that. So kind of to answer your question is now, how deep into the auto mechanics or the inner workings of the engine of the sports car do you want to go? And, I think for most of us, we can change the oil, no problem. But, you get into some of the more technical work, it's important to seek out technical expertise around that.
Mm-hmm. So, since this is the baseline, since this is like square one of this next 16 weeks, I would be interested. I have some things in my brain in terms of goals and what I want to accomplish over the next 16 weeks.
Yep.
What do you think is realistic and possible in terms of you are very familiar with my body comp, you've seen very detailed. What do you think is a reasonably achievable goal for us to shoot for?
So there's things that we're going to look at. So we're going to look at your body comp. We're going to look at your hip to waist ratio and your total body weight. And so in terms of fat loss, you look at people depending where they start. So if someone is obese to start with, losing 2 pounds a week is not unrealistic necessarily. For you and I, because you're not obese at all, you're certainly heavier than maybe you want to be, but you're not, technically obese, and your calorie restriction can't impact your overall performance in the gym or on the fire ground. So I think it's realistic for you to lose about 0.5 pound a week, give or take, of body fat. And that's on average over our 16 weeks together. So, 8-ish pounds, I think, is not unreasonable.
Yeah. And then that would be obviously with hopefully, recomping along the way. Yeah.
Yep.
And that to put that into perspective and what's healthy versus not healthy, when I was doing my cuts for the calendar, I was shooting for 2.5 pounds a week. And it was as crash diet as you could possibly be. Miserable, the worst. And so I'm so happy I'm looking forward to doing this in a way that I see results, but also am not just the most miserable person for a long period of time for my family,
Yeah. The other framework I use that I'm going to introduce you, I'm still working on in all your training guides and stuff this week, but there's I call it the NET system. And this is what we're going to use this is going to be your daily guide in your decision-making every day. So it's NET, nutrition, exercise, tracking. And so you're going to wake up every morning with 6 nutrition points. And every time you eat something or drink something that's kind of outside of what you want to do, alcoholic beverage, -1, high sugar drink, -1, chocolate cake, -1. Okay. So start with 6 points and you only subtract based on decisions you make.
Yeah.
You roll out of bed with 0 exercise points. Your full workout is 4 points, half a workout, 2 points, 2 points, and no workout, 0 points. So you're going to track that every day, and I'm going to send you a weekly survey, and part of your weekly survey is, hey, what was your average net score last week? If the perfect score is 10 each day, I'm going to encourage you to average 8 out of 10. So what does that look like? Hey, I like my high sugar coffee macchiato 3 days a week. Cool. -1 each day. No problem. Hey, I've got a birthday party I'm going to on Saturday. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to score 0. Okay, cool. Score 10 the rest of the week. What happens is you become very intentional about the decisions you make instead of just walking by the kitchen table and mindlessly shoving that brownie in your mouth that someone brought in. You're like, oh, that's -1. Is that how I want to spend that point? Not to geek out or sound too clinical, but really helps. It really helps. And so
that's one of the first things I notice when I get into a dieting cycle is that all of a sudden everything is a label to look at. And, it's like, I'm not buying anything without 170 calories. No way. Or whatever the thing might be, it's like, I think you will find it funny, especially because like I came to you, I need help. I want to lose weight, all this stuff. I even like giggle to myself because once I get in this mode, which I'm in the mode now, like it's not even like the idea of eating a piece of cake is like laughable. And it's maybe not realistic to think that I would never have a treat again, but I know for certain in the next 16 weeks that like I can lock in and achieve this goal. And so this brings me back to a conversation we had as we joked about my Tom Thumb Donuts hat that I thought was apropos to wear for this. How does someone have physical fitness and performance be a focal piece of their life, but also live in a way that doesn't feel restricted?
Yes. And that's how it should be. And that's where, obviously our program is 16 weeks, but this is the next 16 weeks of the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so my hope is that whatever progress we make and whatever you learn in that 16 weeks, there's some value for you that you can literally apply to the rest of your life. Like, hey, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this. And so, and it may be different for everyone, but I would just say a few things like, consistency. There's a book that I love. It's all about compounding interest in other areas of life. So when you look at compounding interest related to money, it's like, hey, if I gave you a penny today and 2 pennies tomorrow and 4 pennies the next day, well, for the first few weeks, that's not very much money. But if I did that for 10 years, how much money do you have at the end of that? So same thing. And this is where I like the NET system, nutrition, exercise tracking, is because it gives you just a really simple tool to just pay more attention to your decision making. So you're not mindlessly, taking in calories or skipping workouts, but 100%. It's all about compromise. And as long as you're consistent and as long as you're kind of maintaining an 80% standard in general over a period of time, you're going to be fine. And so just again, I'll just use myself as an example, like I like pizza and I like ice cream. So I'm going to lose some points. Like on Saturday night, we have Saturday pizza night at my house, and it's like our family, we pick a movie and we have pizza and ice cream. Like I'm going to do that. But I'm going to be pretty clean, the rest of the time. So it's not meant to feel constrictive. And again, we're going to do what we do in the next 16 weeks, but then I'll encourage you to say, hey man, like let's make this sustainable for the rest of your life. Let's make sure you're enjoying yourself. And as opportunities come up, to really embrace, because, I have this, food is fuel at the end of the day. Like in simple terms and technical terms, food is fuel, but food is also entertainment. Food is also social. One of the things I absolutely miss the most about being retired is sitting at the kitchen table for dinner and playing cards with the crew after dinner. Like we had this every shift, we would cook together, eat together, play cards together. And we did that every shift, didn't matter who was working. And that's amazing. And so I'm not going to, whatever, we ate pretty healthy, but if we're going to do a pizza night, fine. If we're going to do I'm not going to not participate in the shift dinner. That's just not going to happen. So just food for thought, again, pun intended, where there's ways to be consistent. There's, for each individual, it doesn't have to be the same for everyone, but just find what works for you. Start somewhere. And that's the other thing I'll share just as a mindset is it's never too early to start thinking about these things. So if you're a firefighter candidate and you're looking at a career in the fire service, it's never too late to start kind of, hey, can I embrace this athlete identity? How am I with mindset, lifestyle, physical training? Like get into it now. But it's never too late either. You might be a firefighter that's going to retire next year. I'm here to tell you, dude, like go all in so that you're in great shape in your retirement. Like train for retirement, like be better in retirement. Like it doesn't even have to be like obviously on the job. Yes. But it's not too late. Like it's not too late. Start just setting some small goals, taking some small steps. Doesn't matter where you start. You can kind of get some traction and grow on that. So anyways, again, I'll just geek out about this stuff all day, but I'm really excited to work with you on it. I'm just real confident you're going to make a lot of great progress.
I think it's going to be great. And so as this these 16 weeks of the 16 weeks of my life. I'll have Ryan back on and we'll check in probably at least once or twice more before the end of the period. And then obviously at the end, we'll have a wrap up and we'll be able to report as to what everything was. And I look forward to, as the listeners of the show know, I'm very open about my life. So the plan is to like have all this information be publicly available. Hey, this is where I started. This is where we ended. This is what I look like before. This is what I look like after. All the things to really go all in on the idea of using this performance methodology and this athlete mindset and see what we can accomplish together. And I'm really excited for it. And I feel very fortunate that you're coming along on this journey and helping me do it.
Oh man, absolutely. I'm excited about it too.
So before I let you go here, let the people know where they can find out more information about what you're doing. And then I'll let you get out of here.
Yeah. So my website is firefighterpeakperformance.com. I'm on Facebook, Ryan Provencher, Instagram, Firefighter Peak Performance, LinkedIn, Ryan Provencher, YouTube, Firefighter Peak Performance. I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, go check out CRACKYL magazine. The whole team there is just committed to supporting firefighter wellness, and just a lot of great information and content there at CRACKYL magazine as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll put the links to all those places in the show notes. And then, me and Ryan will get to work and we'll see how we look in 16 weeks from now. Thank you again. I appreciate you coming on the show. And more than that, I appreciate all the work you're doing, helping me get fit. And I'm excited to see where it takes us.
Absolutely. Game on.
Thanks, brother.